Call the meeting to order. Roll call vote, please.
Alderman Persick.
Here.
Alderman Kirby Hall.
Here.
Alderman Van Dyne.
Here.
Alderman Evans.
Here.
Alderman Kerwin.
Here.
Alderman Larry Hall.
Here.
Alderman Tudor.
Here.
Alderman Studer.
Here.
All present, you have a quorum.
I declare that the regular meeting of the Wilmington City Council on October 21st, 2014 is now in session. Council, you have approval of the minutes before you from October 7th.
I'll make a motion that we accept the minutes from October 7th and have them placed on file.
Motion by Alderman Tudor, do we have a second? Second. Second by Alderman Kerwin, any discussion? Roll call vote, please.
Alderman Tudor.
Yes.
Alderman Kerwin.
Yes.
Alderman Persick.
Yes.
Alderman Larry Hall.
Yes.
Alderman Kirby Hall.
Yes.
Alderman Van Dyne.
Yes.
Alderman Evans.
Yes.
Alderman Studer.
Yes.
8 yes, motion passes.
Thank you. Mayor's report, just a couple things. One, I'd just like to thank everybody that was participation in the Bewitched on Route 66 this weekend. It turned out to be an awesome event. I seen on the pictures, unfortunately I wasn't able to be down there, but it looked like it turned out to be a very good event. And kudos to all those that were involved. Secondly, as everybody knows, early voting is now underway here at City Hall. It'll be going on until Halloween, which is October 31st, from 10 a.m. to 1 p.m.
10 to 1.
10 to 1 for the voting. Yeah. So, yeah, it was 4, but I think you changed it.
Yeah, it should be.
So just make everybody aware for that on early voting. So, next item on the agenda is citizens' comments. Do we have any citizens' comments tonight? All right. Next one is the IGA discussion between the Island Park District and the City of Wilmington. We know we have representatives from the Park District, so Randy, if you want to go ahead and do your roll call for your meeting, and then we can go from there.
At this time, I want to call the Wilmington Island Park District Special Meeting with the City Council for the IGA discussions. Tom Glenn,
Here.
Paula Wyndham,
Here.
Jody Warp, Dave Melvin, here. Randy Hill, I'm here, we have a quorum. Thank you.
Randy, the floor is yours. If anybody does talk throughout the meeting, whoever's doing the talking, just make sure you state your name, and if it's a long name, spell it for the city
I'm going to give
clerk.
this over to my Vice President. He's had some more time to work on it because I had to work all week, so I'm going to turn it over to Tom, and he's got a presentation for the City Council.
Yeah, we have Tom Glenn, I'm the Vice President of the Park Board. We have a PowerPoint presentation to show you. I understand, I run the PowerPoint.
Cool. I don't know, do we have it set up?
No, we
didn't know.
Our laptop isn't working.
Well, that's okay. I'll just go through it. I want to make this short. I believe this is something that has to be discussed on the committee level, but we just haven't been able to meet. And actually with the Park District, there's a sense of urgency. We have to have our tax levy completed and filed in December, and it's already late October. We're only going to have a couple meetings before that happens. And anyway, right, so, yeah, we've got to get together and get this ironed out. It's important. And right now, if as it stands, if there's no intergovernmental agreement, if there's no new agreement, we will have to make a decision of whether we want to stick with the current agreement. And that's going to be a tough call. I can't say that we will or we won't. But I believe there's a 90-day period before some point in April when this has to be decided. And I don't want to roll the clock out and get to that point. So,
Your laptop works.
okay, thank you very much. Yeah, right now, major flaws in the IGA that have to be addressed. There's no capital investment in the parks right now. Issues not being addressed, flooding, the equipment's out of date. We're not in compliance with the Americans with Disabilities Act, and we don't have walk paths. right now, the current status, the city this year has contributed $27,500 for the upkeep, maintenance of the island parks and all the parks. And our contribution is $131,801. As you see, it's more than half of our tax levy. Our tractors are about a year or two overdue. I know new tractors are gonna cost us $60,000. We have to make the decision of, are we buying new tractors? Are we still in the business of maintaining the parks? And I see it seems like the relationship between the park district and the city isn't as good as it should be, because we just can't get together, and we've got to iron this out. I know the city suggestion, I believe our committee met late May, early June. We heard that keep the agreement for the next 10 years. But recently, at our August meeting and on your video, Mr. Mayor, you said that you think the city should have no financial contribution. And that bothers us. The flooding is going to get worse. The equipment is getting old. And, I had hopes with the new people on the council that we could make things happen and get a good agreement. But I'm not giving up. I still think we can. What the park district is suggesting, and this is getting into the stuff we should be talking about in committee, but I'll go through it. We want a fair financial contribution for both sides. We have a 10-year plan with goals and objectives. And we have this set up where we want to have certain points along the way, so we can see in 2 years and 4 years, are we going to get there? We want measurable objectives. And we want to have a meeting every year and just to go over where we're at and where we need to go. I think slide with the money. Yeah, you see, this is some of the numbers from 2012, 2013, 2014, and on the right you see the 2-year average. Bottom line is we've been averaging $112,000, almost $112,500 for the upkeep. And as you see, some of the costs are going up. The repairs, one thing that went down, you notice in 2013, the fuel went down, but that's because we had such a dry year. It goes up and down with the weather. Next slide. This is what we're proposing. Since the city owns the parks and we've never been able to get the parks turned over, that puts us in a unique position. I think you mentioned that we're the only park district that you know of that doesn't own the land. We're saying that the city takes 60% of the expense the first 4 years. Years 5 and 6, pick it up to 70%. Years 7 and 8, 80%. Years 9 and 10, 100%. And we will give you a breakdown every year and give you a floating 2-year average of what the costs are. Okay, next slide. We plan to secure all of the surveys and studies and come up with a long-term plan. So this park isn't just 10 years older with all the same equipment from 10 years from now. Develop a resource team. We need to enforce our ordinances. I I know we have problems with people trashing the parks, with speeders, everything else. Since we don't own the land, we have a problem with that. And, like developmental grants, we need some security. And, I know we've been hit or miss over the years. I thought we were close to getting the parks transferred a few years ago. And then that wound up in a vote to dissolve the park district. So we've got to start working together to make this work. That's all I've got to start it off. Thank you.
I guess I'll rehash some older stuff, and then you guys open to questions, because I'll ask questions if you want. As everybody may or may not know, I'll say this stuff again. In 1949, the Park District was created by referendum by the taxpayers in this community. And at that time, the taxpayers started paying taxes on their property tax bill to maintain those parks in the Park District. And it's happened that way for, up until probably 2003, 2004, 2005, whenever the lease agreement was ended. People in this community who own the parks, the city don't own the parks, taxpayers own the parks. Okay? Everybody that pays properties in this tax owns these parks, not the city. The city, the taxpayers have paid the Park District all those years to maintain those parks. But in 2005, when the iParks, or the insurance that basically provides the insurance for the Island Park District, basically came to the Park District and said, the only way we're going to insure you, because of the lawsuits that have occurred with the drownings, we're just going to have to supply, I think it was a $250,000, $300,000 deductible. Well, from a Park District standpoint, you didn't have those funds or those assets to cover that deductible. So at that time, the city said, you know what, we're going to step in and help the Park District. So back at that time, what we did is we changed the lease agreement, and that's what it was a lease agreement forever. The city stepped in and took over the insurance. And that insurance accumulates a lot of money, and we pay that every year to insure those parks because of the dams and the river and everything else that's associated with that. But the agreement continued from that point. Even though it was a maintenance agreement, there was no cost associated because the Park District still received money from the taxpayers to maintain their parks. It wasn't up until 2007, 2008, when the trailers were removed, that the Park District said, hey, we're going to have a minor shortfall with maintaining the parks. They asked the city to help us. The city at that time stepped in and said, yeah, we'll help compensate you, but at that time it was proposed to be temporary. But what we're seeing here is now it's a permanent thing. I don't understand why now all of a sudden, if the money still coming from the taxpayers to the Park District, why the Park District all of a sudden cannot manage the parks? Does the Park District not get enough money from the taxpayers to take care of the parks? I don't understand what's going on.
Could I answer? Okay, actually, I've been doing some research on this, and I've been on the park board for 20 years. I've got a little bit of history. I don't go way back, but I know when there was a 50-year lease. I believe it went from 1949 to 1999. Then it was renewed. You may have been on the park board at the time.
Yeah, I was on the park board. The 50-year lease was because that was mandated by statute, the length of the lease. That's how long the lease is to be.
Well, a big part of that 50-year lease was the trailer park. The city's contribution to us was the trailer park rental or rent. And I know when I first got on the park board, Charlie often said at the meetings, Charlie Friddle, the director, he said, you know, if it wasn't for the trailer park money, we couldn't run this park district. We couldn't do it. And he said, we actually are subsidized with that trailer rent. And it was part of the 50-year lease, the first one and the second one. And there was an article in the Free Press, 2003, I believe, where it was stated that the income from the trailer parks, now you got to figure there's 20 trailers and they're paying $200 a month in rent. The park received $48,000. Now, to me, if the city is allowing us to maintain the trailer parks and be the landlord and collect the money, that's a significant contribution from the city. And we've had to get by without that.
I think by 2005, you maybe had 8 trailers in there. When I was on there in 2004, I think it was down to 12 trailers.
Yeah, I know, but they started to peter out when the word was out that we were gonna close the trailer park, I believe. In the heyday, there were 20 trailers.
I think at the time when it was eliminated, I think it was 8 trailers.
Yeah.
It was actually done in 8 trailers.
Well, I know that what happened is when that money dried up, we actually had to go to the bonding to, just to buy our equipment. And we did that 2 times. And I don't think we want to do it again if we can avoid it.
Not good economic sense to use bonding authority to buy equipment. But how much money, you guys receive what, $256,000 a year from the taxpayers? The property tax money?
Probably now with inflation, yeah, that's what we're up to. When I was first on the board, I think we were lucky to get 100,000. Things changed.
Well, yeah. But I think, if we get back to the agreement, I think the biggest challenge we all face is, you said, hey, if we don't agree to your agreement, counter. I don't think any of us here can really counter with anything different than what we proposed. I think that's the biggest challenge. To look at the way your guys' structure is, Tom, if I was to take care of your property for a period of 10 years, you guys talked about giving it to you in 10 years. If I come and take care of your yard, over 10 years, do I get your yard in 10 years? Do you lease a building there on Water Street, which you guys are doing a fabulous job, but you don't own that building. Does that owner pay you to take care of that building?
Yeah, I know that the cost of maintaining the parks is probably more than half of our levy. And I know when I first got on the park board, I couldn't understand it. How could you live with a $100,000 budget and pay the salaries of 3 employees and buy all the equipment we had and do everything we could? How did you get by? Well, the thing was, we're getting about a 50% increase from the trailer rental. But,
I think there's a lot more than back then. Even when I was in 97, it was about 180,000. It was getting a year in property tax revenue. But, I think the biggest challenge we face is trying to come to an agreement, okay? I can probably attest without saying it, but I can attest probably to council that, the agreement you guys have in place, I don't think we could agree with. We have our own responsibilities that we get from our taxpayers, the taxpayers in this community, that we have the services we have to provide. And that's what we're trying, we try to do every time. Money's tight, money's tight, you guys know money's tight, you know all it's about it. But sometimes I think the best thing to do is between us 8, instead of between us 8 and the 5 council members, maybe what we should do is, maybe we should take this to the taxpayers. Maybe we should ask the taxpayers, and we can do it on a question in the April ballot, what do we ask the taxpayers? If they feel that the city government should supplement the park district in managing the parks. I mean, just a simple question. And maybe that could provide us the answer that we need to go forward.
Do you mind a question?
No, go ahead.
If I'm understanding you right, then you're indicating the park district should have 100% financial responsibility of the park fund.
Based on what, yes.
Okay, so then when new land comes available that will be geared towards parks, why is the park district not in those discussions?
As far as what type of property we talking about?
Anything that would become park, recreational space.
Well, that's what's been, the last development we had was with Dare Creek Estates. The Park District was the part of that negotiation because it dealt with recreational property and residential communities. There's actually a section of that property in the Dare Creek Estates that's supposed to be turned over to the Park District at 80% build-up. Okay, that was how the agreement was written. That's not gonna happen because Ileana's taking that portion of the property anyway if and when the Ileana comes.
So then if they purchase that lot that was supposed to be a park, will those funds go to the park district?
No, actually, the funds would go to the bank because the bank still owns the property. That would have to be determined through negotiations and stuff like that. But if that's the case, if that property is being taken, and how I look at it, and this is just down the road, if that possibility comes, or probability comes with the Ileana taking that property, we have our own mechanisms we gotta worry about from the city standpoint, because built into the agreement with Deer Creek Estates, there was specific improvements that had to be done on Kankakee Street, and other improvements that had to be done at certain points of build-out, let's say 80% build-out or whatever. We know that with the Ileana, if the Ileana comes in, it's gonna take a good chunk of that property, so we'd never see that 80% build-out. So we have to take into account those type of situations and say, you're basically taking that property, which would have put us at 80% build-out, so these things need to happen, because we still need those road improvements, we still need everything else. And at the same time, we negotiate and say, hey, there's a piece of property that was designed to go to the park district, okay? In lieu of that property, what we would negotiate through the whole thing was that in lieu of the property, we'd take what the value of that property would be, and that would be a cash contribution that would go to the park district, okay? Outside of that, it's the only area where we've ever had any type of negotiation was actually the first one where we negotiated any type of agreement that included the park, was Deer Creek Estates. Everything else, there was always negotiations of park tot lots, or whatever you want to call them, or neighborhood parks. But at the time, the feel of the council back then was that they still wanted to assume control of those parks. Why? I don't know, okay, but now, the last negotiation was no, that property was supposed to go to the park district, but it didn't happen that way. Anything else that's negotiated in the future, when we negotiate with especially with residential development, because residential development is where the impact is on the parks, is residential development. And
Well, it's
industrial,
also in commercial. It's also in commercial.
not really
Head
commercial.
to Plainfield, head to Bolingbrook, and when they lost their property to residential and commercial, they lose their green space. Right now, families that have large green space around them sometimes can't really sense how desperate you are for parks. You go up to Orland and ask those residents, and they now understand why they needed to fight for more green space. Because rapidly, you can become concrete.
Well, absolutely.
So commercial does impact the parks.
But I don't
Not on an
think,
individual
we're not
basis,
gonna
but
ever
on
become an
perspective.
Orland Park or a Tinley Park or Plainfield because of the federal and the state resources that surround Wilmington right now. I mean, for us to be concrete is virtually impossible, you know? But as we tend to grow, and if I was to present any type of corridor path of growth, it would probably be the Peatone Road corridor, okay? Where you could see commercial development and you could see residential development as well. But we also already have built into our agreements to deal with both industrial, commercial, and everything. We have conservation agreements already built in that maintain and preserve that green space. We did that several years ago to ensure that we did not become that concrete base. Even in our industrial base, there's a lot of conservation built into it, okay? It's not parkland, so to speak, but it's conservation property that's usually, that it, you know, has to be taken care of by the proprietors of that property. And that's just how that's established with industrial. But, you know, get back to the point, the impact to park district deals primarily with residential. There could be some commercial, I don't know how our ordinance is exactly structured, I know it's based towards residential development. If any type of residential development comes in, based on the size, there's an X amount of acres or X amount of, you know, property that has to be set aside for a neighborhood park. It's in that, just like for schools and stuff like that. If the property's not needed, then there's cash in, you know, cash in lieu of property and stuff like that, that's always dealt with. So, I mean, that's just how the process goes. But I mean, get back to the thing, I mean, that's, I really don't know where to go as far as negotiation goes, because it just, you know, what my feel is. That's why we haven't had a meeting, because guys are saying to me, you know, we find where it's at, we just we don't agree, we don't agree with how they're structured things. And sometimes it comes to a point, and it's not uncommon, to where you have these types of disagreements, I should say, or these types of gaps, that we go to the people that we represent. I mean, all 8 of us, 9 of us here, and the 5 of you guys out there, we represent the taxpayers. And sometimes there's nothing wrong with us going and asking the taxpayers directly.
Well,
If they feel the city should supplement the park district in maintaining their parks.
But they're not our parks. We don't have control over them.
They're not
We don't
our
set
parks
their
either.
ordinance. You do, they are.
They're the taxpayers' parks.
Okay, if there's repairs that need to be done, the maintenance and upkeep. It's not the taxpayers out there mowing it. It's not the
But the
taxpayers out there.
taxpayers paying for it.
The taxpayers pay for it, yes. But in our taxing structure, which if you pull up tax levies, there can be a line that says park specifically. In the park districts, it's under the general fund, which allows the park board to determine how they spend it. So many communities, the cities own parks. You go to Bradley, Bourbonnais, they take care of their parks, and the park district takes care of the property they own. There is not a legal obligation for the park district. When you reference back to 1949, if you're like Tom and you go back through the archives in the library, it literally says that the parks would be transferred. That was the same year the school district was formed, and that property was never transferred either. If I remember right, we searched all over for the documents of Booth School. So back then, there was an idea the property would be of the park district. That didn't happen. Over the last couple of years, when we negotiated, there was an offer to, one, dissolve the park district. There was another one to go out for bid. What if we go out for bid and we find somebody else to maintain our parks? So for this board to go back and make a decision on how to spend money, when we don't know what you're going to do, whether or not you're gonna go out for bid and tell us the contract's canceled, whether, that's all we're asking. What direction do we wanna go? And we haven't been able to get a response. We want to work together. We want to put a 10-year plan out there. Pretty soon, we're going to have 3 islands. Water's cutting through there, and we haven't ever addressed the amount of standing water from this year. We haven't seen improvements on the park. Tom and I were talking, he used to push his daughter on the same swing he pushed his granddaughter on. 10 years, she'll be 25. He may have a great-granddaughter who's playing on the same equipment. We haven't invested in our parks with this current model.
Park district always bought the playground equipment. Forever.
I can remember.
Okay, they also are getting $50,000 a year out of trailer rental. We asked in the community, they wanted programs. And guess what? They're showing up. The number of people we're serving is through the roof. We serviced over 1,000 people this weekend alone on the island. We're serving the customers, the citizens. But are they gonna understand whose tax dollars are what? No, because we barely can understand it. We're going back to 1949 and this and this. What do we wanna do from this day forward? Because if you don't want an agreement, that's fine. The citizens still get the parks taken care of. They still get recreation programs and their tax dollars don't change. If you want to work with us, we then put money aside so we can invest in the parks and we make the parks a priority. If you don't want to work with the IGA, you guys can figure out what to do with the parks. It's not like the parks will close if we don't go mow them. They're still open to the people, they're still paid for by the people.
I think this has been a problem for too many years, and it's a shame you can't go back and change history. I mean, the fact that the land was never given to the park district, I know there were attempts made, and now it's to the point where with the legal fees, the islands are more of a liability than an asset. But I still think that we need to sit down and do the best we can, come up with some kind of an idea how to solve our problems. Because I know that you don't want to take over the parks. That's an
It's an added
expense.
expense, it's bottom line, it's an
It's
added expense.
it's not that, people think a couple $100, I can mow everything. They don't realize the expenses.
It's a huge amount, we understand. But what we could say is I don't know where to go when we can't even counter the agreement you got, because the built agreement that we have in place is sufficient. And I think that's where the problem is you guys have your agreement that you agree with, we have ours that's basically currently status quo, and nobody wants to budge off either agreement.
I wouldn't say nobody wants to budge, but I know, you see in the news, you see where two sides are are at extremes and they eventually come together. You just have to work it out.
Hey, Tom, I got a question for you.
Sure.
This, percentage rate that you guys come up with, 60, 70, 80, 100, what's that, what's the bottom line, the dollar amount that 60% is gonna come off of? Is that your, budget that you got set up for that year? We're gonna give you 60% of the budget, or what is that? Can
It'll be
somebody?
off the previous 2 years' expenses just for ground maintenance.
So then what you're saying is if we paid you $40,000, we'd have to come up to, in the first 4 years, 60% of that?
No, it would be based off, if you look at, the budget sheet that has the 3 years listed.
So it's gonna be based off your budget?
It will be based off the actuals, the end of the year numbers. So say like this year, if we would have hired to have all the stumps removed, next year you guys would see that added into the cost at half the price. So you would always be 2 years behind on the actual numbers. So the actual amount of fuel that we spent for the 2 years in average. That way, if we have an expensive season, it's averaged out, or if we have an inexpensive. Anytime we can save money, we save the city money.
Not really. Yeah, I would say you're saving the city money, but you're not saving the taxpayers, because now they're paying into two identities to help one go along.
It really,
The money that comes to the city is for the
cost is
city.
gonna be, whether they pay taxes to the city and they move them over to us, or whether they pay them to us, the cost to mow is the cost to mow. We're both nonprofits.
But
The
you're not
money has to go
understanding,
back
what's
into-
happening is, you're taking money from us that we need to use somewhere in the city. Streets, alleys, the ash borer trees, jobs, all that stuff. So, this is what I'm saying, so now, you try to justify to me why I'm gonna take more money from the taxpayers that's supposed to be coming to the city. I know you're saying you're using programs, I know you're saying that we're not set up for handicap or anything like that. We've been doing this probably 6, 7, 8 months, right? Negotiating back and forth on this. We've been talking just 2 months?
2 years.
2 years. 2 years, okay.
And we had one
So we've been on
meeting
this for 2 years, now tell me what we got, other than the bus that comes down here once in a while and picks up handicapped people and takes back up there to programs.
I'm not sure what you're asking. What do we
You-
have as far as?
Tom,
handicap?
Mr. Glenn said earlier today that in the meeting today, that we're not set up for handicap, which you are correct, we're not,
The island, yeah.
okay?
Sure.
And as far as I know right now, we have a handicap program that we're working with New Lenox, I believe.
With the Lincoln Way Special Recreation
Okay.
Association.
So what do we have here now in the 2 years to help the handicapped people down here that the park district's done for us?
One, we have a fully accessible building, which we do have 2 individuals that use our handicap parking with regulation stickers almost daily. So now our office is accessible, our board meetings are accessible, which they weren't in the past.
State statute says that you gotta have handicap parking
We have
after so
it.
many,
We
okay?
have it now. Our
So that's a
office-
must regardless, okay? So even if the city wasn't involved, you had to do that because of your parking spots.
It wasn't in the past. If you go over to 147 Park Street and go into that office, the sidewalk does not meet accessibility, the lips at the doorway do not meet accessibility. In fact, we had a city alderman that used to want to come to our meetings and they couldn't because they couldn't get in and out of the building.
Is that your building?
Is it building? I would have to do research.
Is
I've
that
been
your
told-
building?
Yes, it
I've been
Yeah, I was
told
gonna
the
say, who
building
owns
was
the
built
building?
last, but this.
Then why didn't you make that accessible for the people to
Because the
come?
cost to make that accessible made more sense to move to 315 North Water Street and open a building that already met those.
Okay, what I'm saying is, don't blame that on us, because that's your building.
I'm not blaming it on you.
You said you couldn't get the handicap accessible,
So we corrected that.
so you rented another building.
Sometimes it makes more sense to move than it does
Okay.
to retrofit out-of-date facility.
Can I talk for a minute?
Yes, sir.
Dave Melhorn, I'm a park board member. I think we're missing the whole point here. You're talking about 40 years ago, 30 years ago. Who cares? We're talking about the future. If we're gonna sit here for 40 years, deny parks, whatever, schools, you've seen it happen here. For 10 years to get a referendum, to get a school that we needed. I'm just saying, we're missing the point. We're wanting to rebuild the parks. We want to make them worth something. We can't do that alone because we don't own them and we can't own them. That's why we're saying we need an agreement.
Purchase them? You guys want to purchase the parks?
We can't take the islands. We'll take the others.
Why can't you take
We'll take the rest of the parks.
Well, I understand what you're saying, David. I'm right there with you, I want to see improvements, okay?
Well, what I'm trying to say here
Pat, what's your-
is let's not have just digging at each other like you're doing.
I'll dig.
Renee is just doing the best she can do for this city and the parks. And that's all we're doing. And if you can't understand that, you got a problem.
But we all need to be fiscally responsible to the taxpayers who are paying. That is what your job is, and that's what our job as a council is.
Exactly.
So whether we dig at each other or not, it all comes down to one thing. We are trying to protect the taxpayers. You guys are trying to protect the taxpayers, but please don't make the assumption that, because at the end of the day, it's all about the taxpayers. It's all about every one of us who pay money to the park board. It's about us paying money to the schools, and it's about us paying money to the city.
Okay, one other thing I
To
wanted to
say-
get at.
hold on one second. To say that we're not trying to work together and try to work forward, I think is, you know, I don't agree with, basically. All right, because everything we try to do is try to improve. Just like you guys are trying to instill programs, to create programs and stuff like that, which I think is great, okay? But also, I'll still firmly believe that programs are self-sustaining. Programs shouldn't cost you money. In fact, the park district has a uniqueness with any park district to generate revenue, which we as a city do not. Okay, park districts can make money. They're not profitable, but they can make money because all those park districts are, okay? And through us not recognizing that, yeah, the parks needed improvement and stuff like that, I again disagree with, because when we worked on the annexation of Bridgeport, okay, Bridgeport Logistics, it's an industrial park. Industrial parks have absolutely no impact on park districts, okay? But we recognize that the park districts always are looking for additional revenue and ways that they can take that revenue to make improvements, regardless of where it is and how it's used. And in that annexation agreement, there was a contribution of $500,000 from Bridgeport that's going to the park district, based on build-out. Right now, you guys have received probably $226,000 in the Michelin build-out out there, okay? That is money that the park district can freely do with whatever they want, okay?
Except mow grass. We can't pay labor.
Sure you can.
It's capital.
You get taxpayers' dollars on labor. That's where I feel that the money that comes out of my property tax bill goes towards that labor function.
That's what I'm telling you.
Okay.
We got an opportunity here that we can do this.
But,
We can improve the parks. We can do that. We want to.
well, what's
But you guys, it's like you don't even want to talk to us? And why do we even have a park district then? If all we're gonna do is mow grass, the city can do that themselves.
The only,
You don't need
the
park
the
district.
only stipulation why there hasn't been any discussions is because the two types of agreements where we're saying let's stay status quo. There's nothing that's working. In our opinion, it's working, okay? You guys are saying it's not working and you want to continue to increase the amount of contribution that the city makes, okay? Till you get to that 10-year plan, and then at that 10-year plan, you want the city to turn over the parks to the park district. which in itself really doesn't make sense, because that's like saying, I'm gonna have a landscaping company take care of my property for the next 10 years, and then after 10 years, I'm just gonna give them my property.
We've never
But the point
asked.
is, that's,
But
if you look
the
at,
situation we're in is just the opposite
if
right
you
now.
look at the table you're in, that's how it's been presented, that's what I'm telling you, that's the presentation, and when you look at the agreement, that's how we're looking at it, all right? To say that the city does only contributes 25,000 is wrong. We probably got, I don't know how much our increase is on our insurance, because we are covering the insurance of those islands, we have to.
Yeah,
Because the park districts, and it says right in the first page of that agreement, that the park district does not have the ability to insure the parks.
well, we've
Okay.
talked amongst ourselves, we've agreed that we would take all the other parks except the islands, because we can't.
But you
That
know,
would cut your costs.
because the islands is what really represents the city as a whole. The other parks are nothing, are cut less, they're neighborhood parks. And they have just the same amount of,
But just like Renee said,
importance and
a lot of
everything else.
towns have park district parks and city parks,
That's-
and it works.
Absolutely. It's just like, if you want to classify the Bobcat Field as a city park, it's a city park, always has been. The city has a lease with the Bobcat Association, and it works, you know? But when we start looking at dollars, we all look at dollars, and you talk about tax levies, and, you know, you can ask for, Tom, you can ask for a 30% increase in your tax levy, but you're bound by the 5% tax cap anyway, based on how the levy works. So it doesn't, you know, everybody could ask, you always ask for the maximum amount on levy, if you don't, you lose that money. But we all, you know, we all have fiscal responsibilities. And we're looking at the point to where when we look at these increases and we look at our budget down the year, as we progress down, we're trying to sit there, what do we cut? You know, do we cut employees? Do we cut, any services that we provide? And if by doing that, by cutting employees, we're gonna, you know, really have a drastic impact on services.
I understand everything you're
And
saying.
that's the challenge we face. We look at this dollar and we say, what if we don't come up with that money?
The very
What if
first
we
thing,
can't come up with that money?
the first thing Tom said was, basically, it's negotiations. It's not written in cement. But you gotta talk to us, or we don't know where the heck we're gonna go.
You know, the talk happened, and I know Alderman Van Dyne and Alderman Kerwin met with you, and they've talked with Alderman, they've talked with me too. And I think the challenge that these guys face is that outside of what the current agreement is, I don't think there's any other give. Maybe we talk about a 3% or a 5% increase over each year or something like that. But the numbers you present are so far away from what we're looking at the same time maintaining our own fiscal responsibility, that's the challenge.
But see, you didn't tell us that. You said, we don't have any money.
We don't.
So how would you keep the parks up?
We have to figure out a way, aren't we? If it comes down to that point, we'll have to figure out a way. I don't know.
My question, Mr. Mayor, is would the negotiations for transferring the two neighboring parks to the park district come back on the table? And here's what I'm looking at. And I stated in one of our meetings, it would be an asset to us, it would be a detriment or a problem for the city workers to maintain those parks. We can't maintain those parks. Those parks become park district parks, the North and South Island become city parks. I'm just asking, would that be something that would be willing to be put back on the table? 2 years ago it was discussed, and it stopped.
Well, you got the other part too, but that's the small memorial park. To be honest with you, Randy, I don't know. That would be something, and I'm not gonna force the alderman to say yea or nay right here. I think it's something that they have to think about. They'd have to get back to myself or Alderman Kerwin and Alderman Van Dyne. I don't know. I don't know what the pulse is, because there was some, everything was looking good, and there seemed to be some issues with the Brookside Park. That's what happened, and it went sour, and it never happened. Would that be created again? I don't know. There's lots of challenges. That's probably just small, I don't know. I have to wait and to get a pulse from the county. I can't give you an answer about that right now.
Marty,
But it's an option.
why can't we just plan to move forward and get the committee to meet, because we're under a deadline here. And I think we can work this out. I think that's, just
I
getting
don't
to
think it's
meet
gonna have
would be halfway there.
I don't think it's gonna have an impact on your tax levy, Tom, like you say it is, because you're gonna ask for maximum dollars on your tax levy anyway. You don't wanna leave dollars out there. I mean, that just smart sense when you're asking for a tax levy. We do the same thing. If you don't ask for maximum amount, you lose dollars to the county. It just goes to the county, you never get it back. So, you always try to go for maximum tax dollars. They're gonna tell you what it is. You can ask for as much as you want. So, is it gonna affect your tax levy? I disagree with that. Regardless if the decision is made by October or made in February. But sometimes, like I said, we can continue negotiation, but I still want the option out there that, and I don't know when it has to be in, but I still think the option needs to be out there that we should put it on the April ballot. We should ask the question. It's a simple question. If the taxpayers in this community feel that the city should be supplementing the park district in the maintaining of our parks. It's a simple question. It's a yes or
So
no
does
question.
that just, in other words, indicate if the taxpayers say, no, they don't think that, then the city maintains the parks themselves?
We could get all kinds of, I'm just throwing it out
When we
there.
get the answer, we need to know what the answer means.
Then-
Does the
then
answer
we
mean
can
the
ask-
park district maintains
You
the
know-
parks at their own expense, or does it mean the city maintains the parks at their expense?
Like I said, right now, it's just a question. Okay, we could tailor it to question, we could have 3 questions if we want. Okay, we can ask the questions we want to supplement it. We can ask the question, they want the city to maintain the parks, or the park district to maintain the parks. We can ask all those questions. We don't have to be bound by one question on any question on a referendum ballot. or
But
a
what I'm
question
trying to
ballot.
indicate is, depending on the answer that comes back, you may interpret the answer one way, and the park district may interpret the answer the other way. We don't want to ask a question that leads us to more confusion. If you're just asking to supplement, or if you're asking for the park district to maintain them, we could wind up in the same boat you're in.
Well,
If
if
you
we're-
say we can't afford to maintain them at 100%, we could wind up in that boat.
Right, and that's fine. If we have to where we feel we're gonna have an impasse, that we're not gonna be able to progress forward, and we feel that it's necessary for both taxing bodies to ask that question of the taxpayers, okay? It's not gonna be, I'm gonna dictate the question, and it's not gonna be that Randy dictates the question. We get together to formulate the question to eliminate those questions that those responses, or how your interpretation is of the question. We could tailor that question to eliminate those interpretations. All I'm just saying is that option needs to be out there. If we can't come to an agreement, that option needs to be out there. Because ultimately, it's the taxpayers that should really have the final decision on which
I
direction we're
think
going.
they do by voting in the aldermen and the board.
Absolutely. But sometimes it is not uncommon for questions to go out that way. When there's impasses and stuff like this, it's not uncommon. It happens all the time. In fact, it doesn't happen enough. Because a lot of questions that come out there, if you want to even go on a state and federal scale, it should be asked of the taxpayers, asked of the people that they represent that don't get asked. I understand that you're talking about,
But a
who
lot of
likes
times
it
you
more
confuse
than that.
people because it comes back with a yes vote or a no vote, but sometimes you can't meet those needs. So if the yes vote comes back and says the park district should maintain somebody else's property, legally, we have no obligation to do that. So then what do? We sell a lot of newspapers, we piss off a lot of people, because even though they said this is how we want it, it may not be able to happen. You guys may not be able to make it happen, we may not be able to make it happen. We can't raise our tax levy, and if we can't afford to do it, you can't afford to do it. And if we can't afford to take care of another taxing district's property, when you said, why do we ever want to go into the 70-30, the 80-20, the 100%? You're perfectly fine with us covering 70% of the cost, and you covering less than 30% of the cost. Why wouldn't we want to start balancing that? And 2, in 10 years, whoever sits in your seats, in the park board seats, can then make good decisions on property transfers. Hopefully in 10 years, we have reduced the risk of the dam, taken some of that liability out. We also pay insurance on those islands. That's why our insurance rate is through the roof. If we do not re-sign the agreement, our insurance rate goes from $26,000 down to $7,000. That's a huge savings. So there are things that we should be negotiating and talking to, but if we can't get people to sit down at the table and talk with us, then you don't know how we came up with these numbers. You don't know why we went to 100%. We went to 100% so we could build a reserve, so it made sense to transfer the property. When you transfer the property, you go to zero. You go to zero, so in 10 years, you're looking to get rid of it, kind of like a mortgage. You want to get rid of that payment in 10 years. So that's
Right,
the
but
plan, not.
the thing is, you're asking to get rid of an asset.
Yeah.
That's what don't make sense. You don't just get rid
Then
of
your
an asset.
asset costs you money.
Our asset is belongs by the taxpayers, and I disagree wholeheartedly how this is being proposed. I think as the city administrator, it's my responsibility to represent us like you do. That's an asset. In a real estate transaction, if you're going to find value, which we're going to find value, that we're going to give up an asset to you, and we want to release that asset, we're asking for payment. Instead, we're giving you money instead of receiving payment. So that's the backwards right now, and the
Then
way
it's
the way
perfectly
it's structured.
fine for our board to understand, the parks are the city's assets, correct?
Correct.
Okay, so in other words, you would like to maintain your assets.
We want to maintain our assets, and you want ownership of our assets in 10 years. You want ownership of our assets, make an offer to purchase them over a 10-year period of time. As part of that offer is, you're going to offer services. In lieu of those services, you're going to own these. So it's basically like an in-kind type of service.
It's like a lease to own.
So lease to own. So we're going to pay you to turn over our assets to you, and then we receive nothing at the end of the day, except 10 years of payments for you to maintain the parks.
So
Make
you're
the
saying
parks.
that you're not gonna spend nothing in the next 10 years
Not
to
saying
make
that.
improvements on the park?
Never said that, Mrs. Mark, you're taking that out of.
It wasn't Mrs. Work.
Absolutely not.
Well, we didn't say that. I'm talking strictly real estate, this is a real estate transaction.
No,
Because
it's
you
the
guys
citizens.
have
We're
framed it
really
that
for
way.
the citizens.
You have framed it as a real estate transaction because you want 100% ownership for 10 years.
We came up with an idea.
Right,
We
that's
brought
right.
it to the board and asked them to
And
bring us
if-
something back.
If we're gonna work together as development of a park, which is the asset of this community, belonging to the taxpayers, and if the ultimate goal is to turn that over to some entity, which is, the park district is asking us to do that, then we have to look at that value of paying those dollars out, and what's that value at the end of the day? The value
The
at the end of the day
citizens
is,
have a better park.
the
That's
citizens
the
have a better park, over a 10-year period of time, we pay X amount of dollars, and what did we get in return for that? As the assets belong. You don't give away a free building to someone. If someone's gonna use their building, we need to pay you. In 10 years, if you guys are gonna own this, and we're gonna pay you all this money, I would say we come back with a real estate transaction that basically says at the end of 10 years,
But you just
You
said
owe us
it's
this-
not
this amount of
yours,
money.
it's
You
the
just said
citizens.
that you
You said
didn't
it's
own
it.
not
For the
yours, it's
citizens.
the citizens.
But it's
So
not-
it's
the word
the
I,
citizens.
you guys can twist whatever you want around.
Right.
We're not saying that.
The building you
Let's
guys are
look at
in
it,
is not
let's
yours.
frame it the way it's being framed to us. You're framing it to us as you want ownership of it in 10 years. You're not framing it to us as a partnership. You're framing it to us, you want ownership of it in 10 years. If you want a partnership, let's talk about how we're gonna exchange services. Because as those parks are going, our crews work very well with your guys' crews all day long and work for the citizens' benefit. We know that, you guys all know that, they work together. Let's keep that going as we're working through a process. And if the process is, which, not a bad idea, if you guys can afford to own it and maintain it and have it in 10 years, let's figure that formula out, how that's gonna work. But right now, what they're saying is, they're looking for a timeout to be able to do that. But the pressure's gonna be put on them that, as a city council, because of the way the agreements work, we gotta give a decision to you. So we either got to take a breather, as they do in every negotiations, take a breather and say, well, what are the alternatives? Let's ask the taxpayers. I love the tax question, but I also agree with how do we frame that tax question, the tax referendum question to the people. It is a tax question.
If you wanna get rid of the parks, why don't you just say so?
We never said we wanted to.
See,
do
That's
that.
what the
said that.
referendum's for,
No, it's not.
you know it.
No,
it's
it
not.
is not.
You're assuming something that you have no idea what's going on.
You don't understand how.
We have developed a vision plan for the parks. You guys were involved in those, many discussions. and we got-
We weren't.
I'm not gonna go there. We got public meetings that, they were here. You're allowed to participate. We're willing to work up a plan of action. But you're asking, the way the plan looks right now, let's keep it in very simple terms. It's a real estate transaction. Now let's talk about how we're gonna become partners in regards to sharing for the taxpayers to get the best value out of those parks.
And if that's the way you feel, why haven't we had a meeting since June?
I think a
If
lot.
you want to form a
I'm not gonna
partnership,
go into why we don't have meetings, because it's just human behavior, what's been going on. He said, she said, all that stuff. You're right, there should be times to where everybody sits down. Maybe bring a mediator in if you want to. That's a third party to come in and say, hey,
But you
let's
see,
figure this out.
at the end of 10 years, the city would still have the option to keep them.
But we
Or
might have
let 'em go.
expended, we might have expended X amount of dollars. Do we get that
But
money
you just
back?
said they were your assets. When you have an asset, you need to expend dollars on it.
And we will, we will expend the dollars.
I'm done.
So,
I mean, what we need to do is, you know, we were getting way off kilter when we're still, the asset, we have that asset. We could come to you with something else, but I'm telling you right now, as it is right now, I'll sit down, I'll talk with Alderman individually to find out how do we counter what you guys are asking for, okay? But I can tell you right now, the agreement you have in place, we don't support, all right?
all
'Cause
we're asking for is for you to come back with something else that we can work on.
That's the hardest problem. That's the biggest problem, because we're content with the $25,000 as a structure set right now, okay? How do we change that? All right? How do we change that to satisfy, your formula or come close? I don't think there's a way we can
Do
come
you
close
think
to
your
that.
citizens would be happy with spending $25,000 to maintain the islands?
Let me say something, and I'm gonna say this again. There's two taxing bodies sitting here. Both taxing bodies are responsible and have to, and they're accountable to the taxpayers that pay them and put money in their budget. At the end of the day, we've got the city, the park wants the nice parks they want, and there's absolutely nothing wrong with that. We, as a city, have to look at keeping the water and sewer going, the garbage picked up, and all this stuff, and we're struggling to make our payments.
That's why I want you
But-
to transfer the parks to us
Let-
in 10 years.
Let me finish, please. But at the end of the day, I believe that our citizens, and this is why I believe there might be an impasse, our citizens are gonna be more concerned about the city services that are provided to them. And that's why that we as a council are trying to, whoever the representatives were, are probably trying to say, it's more, our people, our taxpayers that are paying our tax levy and what they're paying the city to take care of and what we're responsible for is very important. And we need water in our homes and we need our sewer, and that's more important than the other things. So they don't want us spending a lot of money on the parks. And there's absolutely nothing wrong with what you guys are trying to do. It's just that an agreement somewhere in between needs to be reached. Because we, as the city council, think it's too much money, what you guys are asking for. You guys are seeing it from your side, and right now, everybody's feet is stuck in the mud and nobody's willing to move. So I don't think, and I'm sorry, in my opinion, I don't think we're gonna come to a conclusion tonight. We spent an hour on it.
We were not expecting to come to a conclusion.
But I'm just saying, we're all accountable.
The last conversation Mayor Orr and I had was in the beginning week of September.
Yep.
When we had a meeting planned, and he said that my people need to get the numbers so that they can look at it. Him saying, your council seats. I asked him, I said, Mr. Mayor, when do you expect that time to be able to schedule another meeting? He told me somewhere the week of the 15th, that was the 15th of September. We are now well past a month from there, and I have yet to any of us on our park district board, ever gotten a call from the mayor or any of the 2 aldermen that are on that committee to schedule another meeting. So how do we have to interpret it as a board that we're gonna ever come to an agreement if we can't get a call back? Mr. Mayor, you remember that last conversation I asked you, you called
Like I
me.
told you, it's kinda hard to have a meeting if I can't get anything that says differently. Everybody says, you know what, we should stay with the status quo.
Marty?
Yes, sir.
I've heard some new options from you guys that I haven't heard before. I'm interested in it. I think we're hearing some good things. But all I'm asking for is, let's get together and hash this out. I think we can do it.
Exactly, that's where we gotta go, but, I don't know where it's gonna end up. I'll be honest with you.
We're not
What's gonna happen.
immovable any more than you are.
At the end of the day, and I asked this when I was at your guys' meeting, on my tax bill, $500, I pay $500 of my tax bill goes to the city of Wilmington. And I know what I get out of that $500. I pay $127 to the park district, okay? What do I get from the park district with the money I pay out of my property taxes?
I think we're proud of what you get. I mean, I think we're going in the right direction. I think we're serving more people than ever before.
What do I get? I mean, all the answer I got was you provide programs. The program should be self-sustaining.
They pretty much are. We're talking about park
That's not
maintenance
what
and
you got.
programming.
You got an answer that.
Two different
told
things.
You get 65 acres of green space maintained and well kept. You
Right.
get programs. We serviced over 9,000 people since March. So we are reaching the residents. We're averaging 75 people a day. So for the same tax dollars you were paying 2 to 3 years ago, we now are serving many more people. So whether the taxpayer's paying it into the city and it gets filtered to the park district to maintain the land, or whether it comes into the park district, it's still taxpayer money. That's what you're getting confused on, is it still taxpayer money? The reason you don't pay out to the library, you asked us that question before, or the school, is because they don't maintain your property.
Can I ask one question, and it's for my educational purposes? When was the park district formed?
1949.
And what was the charter, or what was it formed for at that time?
The islands were supposed to be transferred to the park district.
I mean, what was it for? What was the charter? What were they supposed to do? Were they supposed to maintain property, or were they supposed to make certain, service? I'm just asking, I don't
I
know.
think it said to maintain the parks.
So
In
it was- the
1949.
original charter was to maintain the parks.
Yeah.
Okay, and that being said, what is your budget right now for maintaining the park? What are you guys spending right now for maintaining the parks?
The average is about 113,000.
You're averaging about 113,000. Okay, that answers my question.
Yeah, and then
It's in
also,
that package,
yeah, I think park districts have changed quite a bit since 1949. Now they see that the communities with park districts have, it decreases the crime rates when the kids grow up. I mean, it's a good thing for the community.
I just
And then-
wanted to get a handle on what it was originally started for and what their charter was. I didn't know, nobody's ever told me that. So the original charter was to maintain the property.
I'm not sure we have document on the original charter.
Mr. Mayor?
Okay.
I have a question. I believe you said you serviced how many people at the park district?
I had to pull the numbers, but it's
9,000.
right about 9,000 since March.
You've serviced 9,000 people since March. Okay, so our population is 5,000 in the city. So are you counting repeat visits, or are you saying people are coming from outside of the city?
Some are repeat visits because somebody may come in and work out, but then they may book a birthday party. He comes in and works out daily, but then he and his son come in and do karate. So depending on programs, so it's not an individual count, because if you come have a birthday party, I don't know if you're still a member
Right.
here.
So I mean, you're saying 9,000 people are serviced, but it may not be then that you're.
9,000 bodies, no.
Right, but you're not serving 9,000 individual
Correct.
people
It's
come
not
on
repeat.
repeat. And my other question is, on these, that you presented on the city's financial contribution, what was the rate methodology used to come up with those figures? The 60% during the first 4, on to the 70% for year 5 and 6. What was the thought process behind that, those numbers?
The thought process behind it is we need to be above 50%, because basically we're an independent contractor almost to the city maintaining the property. So we should be covering at least half to more of our costs, so we can reinvest that back into improving the parks as well as providing services. we want to move forward with the expenditures so that it is more likely that the transfer would happen or the two councils at the end of the 10 years would come out to making a solid decision based off the total cost. At this point, I think why the council views the parks as such an asset is because they don't have the expense tagged into them.
Okay, I guess my question is, so the city would be paying more and more and more and more on, towards the maintenance of their asset, and then at the end of the day, say, not take it. I'm gonna keep paying you more and more and more, now take it from me?
Kind of like when you get ready to sell a house, a lot of people go in.
But
and
you sell a
sell it
house and you get more money back.
You're done with your expenditures. If you would like to be in the park business, please let us know.
Just one question, you own the building you're in right now?
We lease the building we're
Okay,
in.
so does the owner of the building pay you to take care of the building? Or do you pay him because he owns the building?
Yes.
So is it the same concept? I mean, you know, that property's got value. After you've been in there for 10 years, is the owner just gonna give you that building?
Probably not. If he wants
But
to
if he did, he would
reduce
probably
his
ask you that.
liability on the building.
That's what we're trying to get at with this.
Okay.
And that's where the
fine,
challenge,
because then what you're indicating to me is then you want to take on the expenditure. So we can just let this agreement dissolve. You can have the parks and the assets, the community will still have them. It just now will be your role to mow them, trim the
Right.
trees,
Right.
prep the fields and pay their
and
labor.
then the bigger answer from the park district will be, that'll be the bigger answer, is what is my money, what's that $256,000 in tax dollars goes to? That's,
Come in and join us, Marty.
that'll be the biggest question.
Come in and join us, because that's where people are coming to.
I've been there.
Renee, did you say prep the field?
Get the maintaining of the structures, doing the electric bill. We spent $10,000 just in the electric bill. No, each team preps the field individually.
You guys used to mow the grass, you don't even do that anymore, do you?
No, we mow the grass.
Yeah, motor today.
Okay. I mean, we can get into that. What we'll try to do is, you know, we'll get our financial person, and we'll have them put together some numbers and say what we expect the cost should be, and in a fair and equitable way, okay? We've looked at what it would totally cost if the city was to maintain it and other stuff like that. We've looked at all that stuff. There's other options we can look at as well. The bottom line is we want to try to come into some type of agreement, but we all got to understand at the same time we represent the same people. And all I'm asking you is, because I really get the feeling, Director, that you don't want to go with the tax question, and that's what kind of concerns me, that if I want that option, I'd like to see that option open, that if we can't come to an agreement, that we can formulate a question, and I'll find out from the attorney when that question would have to be in for the April election. That if we get that impasse, I'd like to see that option open, to where that question can be asked to the taxpayer. Because ultimately, they're the ones that have the ultimate say-so, and in the parks, not only for now, but 10 years down the road. And I think that should be left open as an option, that's all I have.
So what's the question again?
The only question I threw out there, Dave, was just a simple question that I just come up with the top of my head, is that the city should supplement the park district in maintaining the parks, okay? And from the director's feedback was it's too much of an open-ended question, too much open for different types of interpretation. Understand that, okay? We can formulate a different question, but let's see if we hit that impasse where we can't come to an agreement, let's make a formulated question that we can ask the taxpayer. Let them decide.
Let me ask one question of pretty much everybody. Has anybody here talked to any of your constituents about this, about the problems with the parks? Have any of you talked to your people?
I've had people come up and talk to me, and I've heard both ways. I've had people complain about, we have a person right now that for handicap, now our taxes went up, and I've talked to people that are on fixed incomes. I've had other people say, well, the parks should be doing a better job. Like I said, we could hearsay, back and forth, that's not what we're here for.
Well, I think that's what I'm saying. There's a lot of misconception that the park raised the taxes. They didn't.
I understand that, Dave, but try telling the American people that out here.
Yeah.
Like you're saying right now, we're trying to budget the budget, you know, everything else going on.
Well, I think we're not ignoring that you have affairs, you have problems. We all do. And that's what I'm saying. But we do have an opportunity right now. But that opportunity goes away when the agreement goes away. Because
You know,
then we have,
even with any agreements, and it's happened before, I mean, we know the agreement says April, 90-day window and stuff like that. If we go and making progress, and we're not getting worried about that 90-day window, there could be amendments to those agreements at any time.
but when you say this "we," is that including me?
Yeah, it's including all of us, okay?
I'm
But
saying,
any
you
time-
guys think that
Yeah.
you're dictating, see?
No, we're not. I'm just,
We need an agreement, and it's a two-sided agreement. It has to be both ways. Otherwise, there ain't gonna be no agreement, because we have half of this decision too, you know? I think that's why we're
if there's
saying.
any type of intergovernmental agreement, it has to be an agreement by both parties.
Right.
Okay? All I'm saying is if there's progression, okay, and you're worried about the 90-day window, we can make an amendment to it. There's nothing, but the amendment is agreed on by both sides, okay? When I say we, I mean both sides. Okay, let's say we're making progression, and it's January, or it's getting close to January, or whatever. And we say, hey, we're making a movement, we don't think we're gonna have an agreement by March or whatever, or by February, by the 90 days. Let's make an amendment to extend it 90 days or whatever, you know,
I'm
extend
saying,
it.
we took a tour, New Lenox, all the parks. I think John Percy came with us maybe. Okay, that's what can be done, and we see an opportunity coming here. And that's why we're saying.
Right, we understand that. Well, let's, you know, we can dialogue back and forth all night long, but we have other business to take care of. So we've all had the opportunity to kind of express our frustrations or in any type of dialogue we've had tonight in regards to this agreement. Like I said, we'll try to set up something to move forward. Okay, it's gonna be a challenge,
We're ready.
but at the same time, the numbers you've provided, I'll have my accountant look at those numbers and provide her numbers based on her interpretation, okay? And we could present that to them, and they may be totally different than what you're looking at, but we can do that, all right?
That's all we're asking for.
That's all we're asking.
You know, we can present those numbers, but you might have half the council not in agreement to that, I'm just saying, okay? But they may be totally different than what you're looking at. Where you guys go, oh, absolutely not, okay, but we'll see. That's all we can do, all right? You need to close your
At this
meeting.
point, I need a motion from one of our commissioners to close our special meeting with the city council.
So moved.
Second. Second by Dave. All those in favor?
Aye.
Motion granted. Thank you for your time, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, guys, moving on, Planning and Zoning Commission, their next regularly scheduled meeting is for Thursday, November 6, 2014. Building grounds, parks, and safety, Alderman Persick, Alderman Van Dyne.
Mr. Mayor, the next scheduled meeting is Wednesday, November 12th, 2014, at 6 p.m.
You, Water, Sewer, Streets, and Alleys, Alderman Studer, Alderman Kerwin.
Mr. Mayor, I move to approve resolution number 2014-07-8, resolution for maintenance of streets and highways under the Illinois Highway Code.
A motion by Alderman Kerwin, do we have a second? Second. Second by Alderman Larry Hall, any discussion? Roll call vote, please.
Alderman Kerwin.
Yes.
Alderman Larry Hall.
Yes.
Alderman Persick.
Yes.
Alderman Kirby Hall.
Yes.
Alderman Tudor.
Yes.
Alderman Van Dyne.
Yes.
Alderman Evans.
Yes.
Alderman Studer.
Yes.
8 yes, motion passes.
Next scheduled meeting is Wednesday, November 12th, 2014, at 5:30 p.m.
Police and ESDA, Alderman Studer, Alderman Tudor.
I move to approve the quote by Bright Computers for eight Fujitsu mobile data terminals, I did it, not to exceed $28,872.
Motion by Alderman Tudor, do we have a second?
Second.
Second by Alderman Kirby Hall. Any discussion?
Mr. Mayor, can you explain the reason why we must purchase these computers to the citizens?
Yeah, the reason for the purchase of the Fujitsus is, as of November 4th, the 911 board is changing their software programs, which will not necessarily make the computers we have obsolete, but absolutely slow, which does not, would not be conducive to the police officers to conduct the business the way they should be conducting. We could have done it in small spurts, but we felt that the best method was to purchase them all for the squad cars needed at this time based on the price we got.
Thank you.
Any further discussion? Roll call vote, please.
Alderman Tudor?
Yes.
Alderman Kirby Hall?
Yes.
Alderman Larry Hall?
Yes.
Alderman Kerwin?
Yes.
Alderman Persick?
Yes.
Alderman Van Dyne?
Yes.
Alderman Evans?
Yes.
Alderman Studer?
Yes.
8 yes, motion passes.
Next scheduled meeting is Tuesday, November 11th at 5:30 PM.
Finance Administration, Lendack, Alderman Studer, Alderman Studer.
I move to approve the accounts payable report dated October 21st, 2014, in the amount of $233,192.23, and the September 30, 2014 collectors report in the amount of $375,209.24.
Motion by Alderman Studer, do we have a second?
I'll second.
Second by Alderman Studer, any discussion? Roll call vote, please.
Alderman Tudor?
Yes.
Alderman Studer?
Yes.
Alderman Evans?
Yes.
Alderman Van Dyne?
Yes.
Alderman Kirby Hall?
Yes.
Alderman Larry Hall?
Yes.
Alderman Kerwin?
Yes.
Alderman Persick?
Yes.
8 yes, motion passes.
All right, next one, Mr. Mayor, I move to waive the competitive bid for the water tower level control system.
Have a motion by Alderman Studer, do we have a second?
Second.
Second by Alderman Tudor, any discussion?
Was they supposed to get us another bid on that?
We tried.
That's the reason why, that's the
Yes,
reason
that
why.
person.
Okay,
Called 4 people. that are responsible.
okay.
Any further discussion? Okay, roll call vote, please.
Alderman Studer?
Yes.
Alderman Tudor?
Yes.
Alderman Kirby Hall?
Yes.
Alderman Van Dyne?
Yes.
Alderman Evans?
Yes.
Alderman Kerwin?
Yes.
Alderman Larry Hall?
Yes.
Alderman Persick?
Yes.
8 yes, motion passes.
Okay, Mr. Mayor, I move to approve a quote by Automatic Control Services for the water tower level control radio system in the amount not to exceed $39,885.
A motion by Alderman Studer, do we have a second?
Second.
Second by Alderman Tudor, any discussion? This will require a 2/3 majority just in case. Roll call vote, please.
Alderman Studer?
Yes.
Alderman Tudor?
Yes.
Alderman Persick?
Yes.
Alderman Kerwin?
Yes.
Alderman Larry Hall?
Yes.
Alderman Kirby Hall?
Yes.
Alderman Van Dyne?
Yes.
Alderman Evans?
Yes.
8 yes, motion passes.
Mr. Mayor, I move to approve the economic development agreement between the city and Ridge Property Trust and Project Turnkey.
Motion by Alderman Studer, do we have a second?
No, sir.
Second by Alderman Persick, any discussion? Roll call vote, please.
I'm sorry, who made the first one?
Persick.
Mr. Persick. And Mr. Studer.
I made the motion, Mr. Persick
Seconded, I apologize. Alderman Studer?
Yes.
Alderman Persick?
Yes.
Alderman Kerwin?
Yes.
Alderman Larry Hall?
Yes.
Alderman Kirby Hall?
Yes.
Alderman,
Sorry.
Yes, I'm here.
good, I'm not feeling
I was falling asleep
it.
over there.
Alderman Tudor?
Yes.
Alderman Van Dyne?
Yes.
Alderman Evans?
Yes.
8 yes, motion passes.
Mr. Mayor, one more. I move to approve the IDOT intergovernmental agreement to study the impact of the Ilion Expressway on Wilmington's transportation, land use, and infrastructure.
A motion by Alderman Studer, do we have a second?
Yes.
Second by Alderman Kirby Hall. Any discussion? Roll call vote, please.
Alderman Studer?
Yes.
Alderman Kirby Hall?
Yes.
Alderman Persick?
Yes.
Alderman Kerwin?
Yes.
Alderman Larry Hall?
Yes.
Alderman Tudor?
Yes.
Alderman Van Dyne?
Yes.
Alderman Evans?
Yes.
8 yes, motion passes.
Mr. Mayor, our next regular scheduled meeting is Tuesday, November 18th, 2014, at 6 p.m.
Ordinance and License Committee, Alderman Kirby Hall, Alderman Evans.
Yes, Mr. Mayor, the first reading for ordinance for the retail sale of bottled wine and wine tasting events. Second reading will be the ordinance amending the provision of chapter 112 of the municipal code ordinances imposing restrictions on the sale of alcoholic beverages. The next scheduled meeting is Tuesday, November 11th, 2014 at 6 o'clock p.m.
Personnel collective bargaining, Alderman Hall, Alderman Persick.
Nothing at this time, but we will have executive session.
Yeah. City Administrator's report, Mr. Graff.
Kim Dolio is preparing for the tax levy to be on display. We will schedule a public hearing for the tax levy for November 18th meeting. Hopefully we'll have things be on display, with them on display 10 days before. She's waiting for the pension, police pension numbers, and then also our rollover bonds. If we don't have those solidified, we have estimates that we'll be able to still put on display, because we could always change after the public hearing. And the goal is to have the hearing, and then we have to pass something in December, so it gets recorded by, what, Tuesday or Thursday? Fourth Tuesday.
It's the last Tuesday.
I'll turn over to Kobe, he's got a couple of updates coming up. Projects.
Yeah, as most of you probably saw, the hydroseed mulch placement facility began today. They should be back tomorrow to probably wrap that process up. You're going up and down 53, the temp signals out there at South Arsenal Road are being installed. Those should be up in operation in the next 3 or 4 weeks. Vine River water main, they will be out there hot tapping both those mains tomorrow. Each of those roadway installs will take probably a day or so, but they should be in out of here relatively quickly. So the main thing they want to do is get the hot taps set up with the jack. Everything's coordinated, ready to go. They're going to begin pouring the pavement out there for grass camp at Ridgeport tomorrow as well. And the last thing is the bid opening for the water main along 53 got pushed back to a bid opening of November 20th. Looking at the cost and the prices we're getting from contractors, looking to push this back to be a sprint project to get some better prices for them. So,
North End, lights and stuff.
yeah, we're waiting for Gary to return back to install those lights. So,
Parking lot?
Yeah.
parking lot, yeah.
Do we have anything update any more than 102?
Project.
It's a spring project.
Okay.
You know,
So it is spring.
Yeah, they're out there, lay everything out, but it'll be a spring project.
To be doing that, right?
Yeah. So I've talked to Dee about that a number of times, but
Okay.
I might bring it up there. We don't even know what that project is. That's a spring project, so
And there is a coordination meeting coming up for the water concerns over by Jehovah's Witness and Browns. Senator Rosen is setting that up, and it'll be next Thursday. Township, county, Claypool, drainage, and also will be represented to talk about that swamp.
Is IDAC going to be involved also due to the fact that their tiles run through there?
well, OJ's already been presented all those projects we've had, or the issues we have, and OJ, Sue's assistant is supposed to be contacted by that himself.
Nice if they showed up.
Yeah, and I think that's, talking to the Senator's office, they're very aware of that fact, and I think they'll work diligently to try to make that happen, because I think that's where, I think they're recognizing, and I know we've recognized that's where the disconnect is at IDOT, and in reference not only to the project, one of the projects we're dealing with, the project on 53, as it relates to by Van Dyne Motel, and then there's also the project here at 102, so I think it'll be good to have that meeting set up by the Senator. She'll be there to really get a clear picture of what the issues are and how long standing they've been, so. Is that it, Tony?
That's all.
Thank you.
Attorney's report, Mr. Urban.
Thank you. The closing took place on the 3rd and Chestnut property, so the city no longer owns the property. The quitclaim deed for the South Tex property has been recorded. One of the properties had a tax sale on it, so I filed a petition for a sale and error on that. That's up next week. We're asking that the court declare that tax certificate for the sale for that parcel will be vacated. The tax purchaser does not actually own it yet. They just have a tax certificate that says they have a right to go to the court and ask for a tax deed on it. So I'm filing a petition for sale and error, so that the court would declare a sale and error, and the county would receive it out, not lose it by way of a tax proceeding. So I spoke with the tax attorney and sent him the information. So that's up next Tuesday. That's the extent of my report.
You, Mr. Urban. All right, looks like I need a motion to go into executive session.
I'll make a motion to go into executive session at 8:23 for land acquisition and probable litigation.
All right, motion by Alderman Larry Hall, do we have a second? Second by Alderman Tudor, roll call vote please.
Alderman Larry Hall.
Yes.
Alderman Tudor.
Yes.
Alderman Persick.
Yeah.
Alderman Kerwin.
Yes.
Alderman Kirby Hall.
Yes.
Alderman Van Dyne.
Yes.
Alderman Evans.
Yes.
Alderman Studer. 8 yes, motion passes.
Thank you. And we got a motion to come out of executive session.
Mr. Mayor, I make a motion to come out of executive session at 8:35.
A motion, do we have a second?
Second.
Second by Alderman Tudor, roll call vote please.
Alderman Larry Hall.
Yes.
Alderman Tudor.
Yes.
Alderman Persick.
Yes.
Alderman Kerwin.
Yes.
Alderman Kirby Hall.
Yes.
Alderman Van Dyne.
Yes.
Alderman Evans.
Yes.
Alderman Studer.
Yes.
8 yes, motion passes.
No action following executive session this evening. Our next regular city council meeting is scheduled for Wednesday, mind you, not Tuesday because of the election. Wednesday, November 5th, 2014 at 7 o'clock p.m. Motion to adjourn. Second. Favor?
Aye.
Wait for it.